Okay, so I finally caved in and decided to watch the US presidential debate and completely destroy my circadian rhythm and, well, give it a go. And it was pretty much like I expected it would end up. Now, this commentary is gonna be part analysis and part description of what happened and part where do we go from here. Because if you thought that the Democratic Party was going to defend whatever was going to happen with Joe Biden in this debate, well, that's something that I think most people got wrong. But I will start by saying that Biden was way more articulate than I thought. And jokes aside about cocktails that could be energizing him, Red Bull, or Gavin Newsom pressing the Adderall button, I thought that he was going to have way more glitches. He had his glitches, and we're gonna talk about them in a minute. But all in all, he was more or less lucid and aware of what Trump said, in the sense that most of the time it felt like an actual debate, even if it was heavily restricted in terms of timing, the closing of the mics on each side when one side was speaking. But the first thing that I noticed right at the start of the debate is that the first question was directed at Biden, and he answered, or began to answer, on the spot, like immediately.
What do you say to voters who feel they are worse off under your presidency than they were under President Trump?
We got to take a look at what I was left when I became president, and what Mr. Trump left me. We had an economy that was in free fall. The pandemic was so badly handled.
Okay, I understand that you have only 2 minutes to answer. You cannot waste any second, just 2 minutes. But it was like a machine gun, and right from the start. Like, there was so little delay from the end of the question to Biden beginning to answer. You know, all these doubts surrounding the debate if they had all these restrictions, but maybe Biden could have an unfair advantage. Maybe he could have access to the questions beforehand. Well, I'm not saying that he had the questions beforehand, but when you ask a question and the person begins to answer like a machine gun right after you finish, with no delay, with no pause, it is a strong signal that they might have practiced their answers beforehand. Now, when you look at the debate's topics, it is more than obvious that Roe versus Wade, illegal immigration, January 6th, all that stuff were questions that were going to pop up at some point or another. So it's normal that he would have practiced his answers for any of those questions, regardless of the order in which they would pop up. It's not like he was going to be asked about the current state of the ice cream production in the United States, although that would have been interesting. But the second thing that I noticed is that I had to put my English to the test. This was really hard for me to understand, especially when Biden was speaking, because according to public sources, it seems that Biden had a cold. That would explain the raspy voice, but the funny thing is that at no point he had any other signs of having a cold, and we are already used to Biden mumbling. He doesn't have the energy of 8 years ago, that's for sure, but at least his voice is usually clear, not raspy like this. Maybe he hasn't got enough sleep or something, but it was pretty hard to understand him. And that's where the following clips come from, when Trump says, well, I don't understand what you said. And yes, after that clip, I felt a bit better about myself.
Move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we can do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look.
It's not my English comprehension after all. And I saw on Twitter that many people were clueless as well as to what was Biden talking about. Speaking of Trump, I'm going to mention the disposition on the screen. This is something that for any debate or any broadcast is helpful. Trump got the left side and Biden got the right side. In this case, it's way better for Trump to get the left side, in the sense that his gestures and the way that we read the screen is going to be presenting him as the main one, as the most important, the one who we start reading from the left side of the screen. Of course, this was totally random, but it's worth keeping in mind. Trump's body language was very controlled. His voice tone had practically no changes over the debate, and he really felt like he was trying to control himself. You know that Trump is used to those outbursts, those high and lows in his voice, those strong hand gestures. He was very controlled in that regard. It was interesting to watch. I guess that he knew that he had all these rules that he had to comply with, and that's why he decided to, well, I can just play within this rule, so let's do this the best way that I can within the rules. So that's why you could have seen Trump a bit lukewarm at times. And one of the best moments was when they talk about the idea of deciding this over golf. And yes, many people thought that it would have been a great idea to decide this over golf because the debate was really boring. Maybe it's because I'm not American, because for me it was almost a snooze fest. I was trying to pay attention to some of the topics. I wanted to know what did they say about illegal immigration, especially Biden. What Biden had to say about illegal immigration. And there's something that happened. Trump was talking about illegal immigration, and he makes this remark like suggesting Joe to, well, answer to this. What do you have to say about this? What do you have to say about the 18 million illegal immigrants that come from prisons from all over the world, from Latin America into the United States? And well, Biden never really answered that question. But we could say that he never addressed that remark from Trump. And someone told me on my Twitter replies that Biden doesn't have to answer Trump's questions. It's the moderator, the one who asks the questions. Well, that's not how a debate works. Yes, they both have to answer the moderator's questions. The moderator is there to ask the questions and they answer. But the logic of a debate is that if your opponent says something, your opponent exposes their policies or their opinions, and of course it's your opponent, it's going to be directly in conflict with your opinions and your politics. Well, the sensible thing is, the common sense thing is to just reply to that and say, hey, you're wrong. I'm not lying because such and such. Here are the facts. Here's what has happened. You are wrong and I am right. You have the opportunity to reply to your opponent's remarks. So Trump talks about illegal immigrants. He defies Biden to say something about that, and Biden just eludes the question, doesn't answer it directly, and that tells a lot. And this is just a personal opinion. I think that's one of the most pressing issues currently in the United States and in many countries as well. But everything was not a bed of roses, and at some point Biden began to glitch, and he glitched heavily when he was talking about Medicare.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
At some point, I think that Trump was worried about Joe right next to him glitching, and it was one of the few times that Trump actually looked at Joe Biden. You know, that is something like a power strategy. Your opponent is talking, you don't address them, you don't look at them, you don't acknowledge their existence, you pretend that they don't exist. That's something that you do on debates to present yourself as powerful. But in that exact moment, Trump was looking directly at Biden, as in, the guy is really glitching. And in that sense, something that Biden did many times was to look at Donald Trump. And when I say look, is to just keep staring at him like absent-minded, like zoned out. And for some reason, not only with his eyes wide open, but with his mouth open as well. I mean, it really looked like Biden was not there, like his mind was somewhere else. I don't know how, with that facial expression of being on another planet, he was able to keep up with Trump's remarks, but he did. He had difficulty expressing himself, but he did. Now, after the debate, CNN had already ran the numbers, ran a poll, and had decided who was the winner of the debate. CNN. And this tells a lot about the possibility that this debate was a setup so Biden could be replaced before the Democratic National Convention. And there are two things that were truly embarrassing to watch. First, the way that he was brought off the stage or off the podium by Jill Biden. Donald Trump just walked away immediately after the debate finished, and Biden remained at the podium like frozen before Jill Biden got to him, nudged him a couple times, and then help him walk off the stage to talk with the moderators. It was concerning to watch. Also, how come someone took a high-resolution photo of that exact moment in which Biden needed help to go down one step? Who allowed this to come out? It seems like an orchestrated stint to feed the media the narrative that Biden has to go, such as the Time magazine cover in which Biden is going away right at the border of the page, which is misinformation in two levels. First, Jill is not there to help him. And second, Biden has never been at the border, if you know what I mean. But those left-leaning columnists all over the United States suddenly saying that Biden should bow out of the race. There are so many people saying that this is elder abuse. And again, there are a few other ways of looking at this. And it was not only that moment of helping him off the stage. She also said that, well, it's great that he answered all the questions because you know that a debate is about just answering all the questions.
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts. And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do? Why?
Now, if this was a setup to take Biden off the race, then who is going to be the replacement? Is this going to be Michelle Obama? I don't think it's going to be Michelle. I don't see her going into all that stuff. It's too much work. Maybe she's not that interested in the part. But Gavin Newsom, I would bet that the guy is just rubbing his hands at the backstage. And that's how we got clips like this one.
Are you going to be the next Democratic nominee?
No, our nominee is Joe Biden. I'm looking forward to voting for him in November. He's going to be our nominee.
Because you know that everyone are talking about you as a possible nominee now.
Yeah, definitely Gavin Newsom knows what's coming up, and I wouldn't be surprised that he is the pick for the Democrats to replace Biden. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised that they just leave Biden all the way up to November. Nothing would surprise me anymore. But I would like to know what do you think about this in the comments. Don't forget to download my free 100 body language tips in the description of this video. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the body language guy. Much love and bliss.